The 2-1. Lindor towards right center field. This one is back. It is gone! Grand slam! And Lindor puts the Mets on top. The biggest swing of the season for New York.
3-second differential. Shot clock, game clock. Shot clock down to 5. Here's Towns from 3. It's good! Karl Anthony Towns with the dagger. 3-point field goal.
Knicks regain their composure. Towns, deep 3-ball with the switch.
Yo, ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? What is going on? It is your boy David from Top Bunk Sports, and I am here with a Mets series recap. And the first recap that we're going to do is obviously the very first series of the year, Mets versus Astros. And before I get into it, I just want to say, man, it feels good to come back here and talk about my Mets. Obviously, I've been dolo for a couple of days, kind of just working on things with the 7 Express podcast. If you haven't already, please follow my guys, AP, Chris. And we got a little bit of a surprise too. That will be announced in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Still trying to determine that, but you guys will know when it is announced. But just working with my guys and just trying to put that Mets content out under the 7 Express podcast. So please make sure you follow us on all social media platforms and just show us some love and give us some likes, man. It really goes a long way. Guys are doing amazing. We're doing amazing and with the content and really just putting in the hard work. But I wanted to take some time to obviously get that under wraps and under control with the Knicks stuff. I know, shout out to my people in the Knicks community. They were wondering why I haven't really posted anything Knicks related. I decided to just not really post for the rest of the season. I know it's kind of a little bit, it's like, dude, you can't just go off like that and just wait. I wanted to wait until game 1 of the playoffs, kind of give it a good start and really talk about a little bit of some meaningful basketball. And every game is meaningful for the Knicks. But I really wanted to just give myself a start point to get back into it and just, what's better than not covering the playoffs? You know what I'm saying? The boys are in. The boys already clinched the top seed, so that means they will be home for game 1, whether they play the Detroit Pistons or whether they play the Milwaukee Brewers. So we'll see how that goes. But enough of that. It's baseball. Baseball is back. My love is back. I'm always excited for fucking baseball to come back. That's before it was basketball, it was always baseball. Grew up with baseball. I grew up in a family that loved baseball and grew up in a family that loved the Mets, man. And, this is what I do it for. So opening day obviously was March 27, 2025. And we were all excited. They threw us in the gutter already playing the Astros. The Astros obviously with a couple notable pickups. You had Christian Walker, Isaac Paredes that they got. And listen, man, it was one of those things where guys were rusty. Everybody was expecting what was Juan Soto going to do. And Juan Soto obviously wasted no time hitting a single right up the middle for his very first hit as a New York Met. But that would be all that the Mets would have in that game. Obviously, they tallied in a total of 6 hits, but they couldn't get no run support. 1 run the entire game. The bats were cold for the most part. Again, 6 hits, but really couldn't muster up any runs. They got 1 error. And then the Astros, they were able to get 2 runs early. 2 runs early. Obviously, it started by Yanier Diaz, and then that scored Isaac Paredes, who was already on base. Francisco Lindor was able to get a sac fly to go in and get us on the board, but by then we were already down 2 runs. Houston had already put 2 runs on the board, so that already kind of gave us I would say more of a harder chance to come in because we were scoring. We scored late. It really wasn't. We didn't really give ourselves a window to score as much as we should have. And Framber Valdez was cooking, man. Framber Valdez did what he needed to do. That brother balled out, And there's nothing you could say about him. He's an ace for a reason. He went 7 innings. He only allowed 4 hits. He allowed 0 runs. He only allowed 2 walks, 4 Ks. Had us quiet the entire way. Then the bullpen did what they needed to do. You had Abreu that came in, didn't allow a hit or didn't allow a run, but he obviously allowed a couple walks. Was able to he had 1 strikeout. Was able to get out. And then you had Hader. He allowed 2 hits and 1 run. But again, that 1 run, we were down 3-0 when he allowed that 1 run, and then he was still able to get the save. So, it is what it is. Can't do nothing about it. I do want to talk a little bit about Clay Holmes. Obviously we were anticipating his start, his opening day start, his Mets debut, and it really wasn't that bad. I'm gonna be honest with you. He really showed a lot of potential. Again, this is a guy that you're talking about moving him from a reliever slash closer to a starter. So there's a lot going on in that situation. I wasn't expecting nothing crazy for him. Obviously, if he came in and he delivered and he pitched above expectations, I think in my opinion, I think that benefits us in a long way. So shout out to him for that. Obviously, he went four innings. He allowed 5 hits. He allowed three runs, but he kept those 3 runs early. That's the thing, is when he allowed those 3 runs, it was early in the first or second inning, and then after that, it was pretty much he was in control. Two earned runs. He allowed 4 walks, but he got 4 good strikeouts. And again, his movement was there. I don't think it was one of those things where he was really struggling. He obviously allowed guys on the base path early, but it was one of those things where there were good movements on his pitches, good movements on his sinker, good movement on his changeup, his fastball. He was attacking the strike zone with his fastball. So there was a lot of good positive signs to go with Clay Holmes in that start. Obviously you want to see him progress as the season goes. This is a guy, like I said, that you're taking from the reliever spot and you're putting him as a starter. So there's a lot of things that you got to roll with when it comes to Clay Holmes. But again, we all trust and we all believe in his stuff, and we believe in that pitching lab. We believe in Jeremy Hefner and what they've been able to do. You saw it last year, what they were able to do with Sean Manaea, with Luis Severino, a little bit with David Peterson. David Peterson had the best year of his career, and now we're excited to see what a second year David Peterson, is going to show. So shout out to David Peterson, shout out to the pitching lab, shout out to Jeremy Hefner. Obviously, like I said, it was more about the offense not being alive during that point. And it went on, and the Mets lost opening day by a score of 3-1. And then we go on to game 2. And in game 2, it was like, okay, now that they got game 1 out the way, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen in game 2? What are we going to see from this team? And funny enough, the way we lost in game 1, or the score that we lost in game 1, we won in game 2, excuse me. And I think the most satisfying part about all that is that you were able to see a Juan Soto home run. Juan Soto took a pitch up high and mashed it to right field. He was able to get the nerves out. He was able to get everything, going and everything really flowing. And again, what I like about in game 2 is that the Mets jumped on it early. I mean, it started with a Mark Vientos double. He drove in Brandon Nimmo. Then right after that, Jesse Winker came and drove Mark Vientos right after that and made it a 2-0 score. And then in the top of the third, Juan Soto with his first Met homer, with his very first Met homer, and that was a bomb. And it was a no doubter as well. Let's actually take a look at the home run right here.
I mean, he hit that ball with so much authority, you thought he was right-handed.
Oh. Well, he's left-handed, and he hits this one with authority. That one is out of here. Juan Soto's first home run as a New York Met, a laser, and so many more to come in the next 15 years.
Two pitches before that way, he looked at Hunter Brown, gave him that stare like, you got away with that slider.
He's in his prime right now, and I gotta really like just commend him for the mentality that he has and the approach that he comes in with at the plate. It's such a beautiful thing to see. Not many players really have that, and so many people are saying that there's flaws in his game. He's not worth the money. At the end of the day, any team would die to have this guy on their team, and the market is what the market is at the end of the day. So I know that certain people were complaining about the money and, oh, I don't think he deserves that type of money. Listen, if you're a Blue Jays fan, if you're a Red Sox fan, if you're a Yankee fan, if you're a Dodger fan, they were all prepared to overpay him for the money that they didn't think he was worth. Let's be real. Let's be real. They didn't think he was worth all that money, but they paid him. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. You gotta take it for what it is. Like I said, the market is what the market is. He got what he thought he was worth. He got his money. And at the end of the day, you enjoy what Juan Soto can give you as a player in his prime. Okay. We've seen him as a 20-year-old in his second year in the league. I would say he didn't know what the fuck pressure was. He goes into the playoffs as a national and he does what the fuck he did. He devoured a fastball up and in from Justin Verlander and sent that to the moon. At that moment, I said, this kid is built for the big lights. This kid is built for the moment. And ever since then, he's never shown that out. He's never proved anybody wrong. He's done it with San Diego. He's done it with the Yankees. He's built for the moment. So, people are saying that, he hasn't got to a hot start yet. That, that home run is just that one home run. At the end of the day, you got to let that brother get into a rhythm. You're a baseball player. Baseball players are guys that, get into, it's a sport where you got to get into a rhythm for things to go your way. Whether you're seeing the ball well, if you're confident in your batting stance, you know what I'm saying? If you're confident with the way you're hitting the ball, like, everything takes time. Everything takes a rhythm. Now, certain players, they get into rhythm. They get into rhythms later. Certain players get into rhythms right away. You never know. When it's your time to catch fire, you catch fire. And at the end of the day, I'm not expecting Juan Soto to do anything crazy in terms of going out there. And if he stinks the bed, listen, I'd rather you stink the bed now and go through your flunks now, then do it when we get into the playoffs, or when we get to end of August, or when we get to late, early late September, because if that's where the fun goes in, then that's when the question marks really, even though we have him for 15 years, you still want to see him perform at the biggest moment. So, glad that he was able to get that first home run out the way. You always want to get your first one out the way, pause. But you always want to get your first one out the way. You always want to get that big question mark of when is his first home run going to be hit? And he got it, man. He hit a bullet. He hit a bullet. But the Mets would go on to score those 3 runs that I said, from Mark Vientos, Jesse Winker, and then Juan Soto. The Astros were able to put one in the 6th inning, but that would be all she wrote. They put one run off a single from Jose Altuve. Jake Myers was able to score. Excuse me. No, excuse me. No, I'm sorry. They were able to pull one, but it wasn't from Jose Altuve. But the Mets would end up, the game would stay in that score. The Mets would end up winning by a score of 3-1. So the same score that they lost to the previous night, they went and won that second game. Now the third game. And I think in the third game is where you're really gonna be like, okay, we can't have this. So the third game, you talk about opening day offense being flat, even though, like I said, they mustered up 6 hits with only 1 run. In this game, they mustered up 1 run on 1 hit. And guess who got that 1 hit? Mr. Juan Soto himself. Went the other way in the first inning, went the other way, and got a double off the Crawford boxes. That would be all she wrote. You had this guy in Arrighetti. I can't say his last name right. So apologies if I get his name wrong. But Arrighetti had the Mets quiet, had them on one run and one hit the entire way through. To me, I was surprised. I was really surprised because when you even though 3 runs over 1 run isn't really nothing because you can tie or take the lead just like that, it seemed like they played a hell of a heavy game the night before and they were just tired. And we've seen that a lot through the Mets in terms of their offense not being there or being stale. And you're always wondering to yourself, like, when are we ever going to get consistent offense? And that's what I think this a lot of Met fans and a lot of us that really cover the Mets and really talk about the Mets, that's what we predicated this team on, is their offense. We kind of knew that their pitching, if everything was right within the pitching lab for a second straight year, we know what their pitching can do. We know what a Clay Holmes can do. We know what a Sean Manaea could do. We know what maybe a Frankie Montas. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but if they can get Frankie Montas to really trust his fastball a little bit more and really work his pitches, and you see a completely 180 like we saw with Sevy last year, yo, by all means, I'm for it. I'm all for it. You're talking about a second year pitcher, and even though he's been in the year longer, in terms of success, you're talking about a second straight year with David Peterson. I'm excited for that. And then you're talking about the return of the Ghost Man, Kodai Senga. What is he going to bring after his experience in the playoffs last year? You know what I'm saying? I mean, Mendy really just threw him in the fire as our ace type per se, but he hadn't pitched since his return in 2024. You know what I'm saying? So, and that was like July. So you know what I'm saying? So he's missing almost 3 months of action. And then you just throw him in the fire in the playoffs. And it's just like that, you gotta guys are human, man. Guys get their nerves going, and sometimes it doesn't work. So, the pitching staff is really what we were all looking forward, because we all said to ourselves, listen, it at the end of the day, this offense is going to do what they're going to do. Francisco Lindor proved it last year. We know what he can do. Juan Soto, we know what he can do. Pete Alonso, maybe a question mark, because now there's certain things that we would like to see from Pete, especially after last year's struggles, but we know what he can do. There's a lot of guys in this lineup where it's like, we know what you can do. And then you add a guy who is a powerhouse. He strikes out a lot, but he's a powerhouse and he's a great defender at City Field. You add Jose Siri to the bottom of the lineup, where that structures the bottom of your lineup now, right? You have a guy that is a threat at the bottom of the lineup, to where now, once he becomes a threat, whether it's a home run or whether he gets on base with a single or a double or a triple, now you got to deal with Lindor. Now you got to deal with Juan Soto. Now you got to deal with Pete Alonso. So there's a lot of factors in this lineup where we don't really look at it and be like, yo, this is where we're going to have issues with. Going into this game, though, that was the issue. You know what I'm saying? Well, Avi's not in there, but Terrence has been his replacement, and Terrence has done a beautiful job as his backup catcher. So, when nobody really being able to hit anything, you're kind of wondering to yourself, like, okay, this might be a little bit of a concern, because we've seen it in the past, and they're still doing the issues where they're swinging outside the strike zone, they're chasing when they don't need to be chasing, it's stuff like that. So at the end of the day, you learn from games like that. Again, like I said, the pitcher, Arrighetti, and I'm saying it that way, excuse me, because I really hate messing up his name, but he really had it shook, and it was disgusting, man. It really was disgusting. And shout out to Jose Siri that provided that run, the only run that we had when he was at third base, and comebacker came to Arrighetti. Arrighetti kind of looked at third base and then really like just took a glance, and as soon as he turned around to throw a ball at first, Jose Siri said, "I'm putting on the Jets," and ran stole home and scored and tied the game 1-1 at one point. But then the Astros would score another run, and that would most likely be all she wrote. So, the Mets lose this series to the Houston Astros, 2-1. Again, there's a lot of things that you can pick apart negatively, and that's uh the offense being dead, but there was a lot of positives that I saw from here as well. You're talking about, Juan Soto already getting into rhythm. And then you're talking about the pitching, where multiple pitchers already told reporters where it's like, they don't really have to worry. They don't really got to worry. We understand what we got to do. We understand what we got to consist of year in and year out. So, they right so far, it has been proven that this pitching has worked. I mean, if we want to go to Canning's performance, mind you, Canning is no saint. Canning scared the hell out of us last year. Let's talk about his numbers last year before we go into this year so far. He was 6-13 with a 5.19 ERA, right, and 130 strikeouts, and he had a WHIP of 1.40. Man, so again, he struggled. He struggled. So then he comes this year, and so far he's pitched one game, uh, and with an ERA of 3.18, but a lot of the things, there was a lot that worked for him in terms of just his pitch movement, right? The movement on his slider, his fastball was on point, throwing inside to a lot of righties. You know what I'm saying? Like he location wasn't a problem for him. And I really do gotta commend him for that, because this is a guy that I instantly thought, and I don't like to judge a book by its cover, but this is a guy that you instantly thought, man, he might give us problems. He might give us problems. And he went in there and, despite giving up those 2 runs, he cooked. He cooked. And you're gonna need him more now that Shamanai is not here and that you don't have Frankie Montas. And when you don't have those two guys, and I know not everybody's a fan of Frankie Montas, like I said, but if this pitching left proves to be success like it has in the past, I'm sure Frankie Montas will be a much better pitcher. And I think he'll be one of those guys where it's like, damn, I didn't see this coming. You know what I'm saying? So, there's a lot to go within this bullpen. I mean, this rotation, excuse me. The bullpen is what it is. I'm impressed by the bullpen. They got a lot of heavy guys. Her Oscar Barraza. You got Danny Young in there. You got Reed Garrett in there. You got AJ Minter as your setup man. A lot of options compared to what we had last year. And I think you're going to see more of the pitching success and what they've been able to do. So far, they haven't let us down. It's been the offense. Uh, you can't have games like that where you're only scoring, where you're going the whole way through with 1 run and 1 hit. It's not sustainable. You know what I'm saying? And it's not clean. It's not what Mets baseball is about. It's not good baseball in general. So, I hope that these guys can learn from that game and learn from the opening day game and just really take notes. Like, okay, maybe I should have said this, or maybe I should have done this to kind of help myself a little bit. But other than that, man, it's a you live and you learn. Mets, like I said, lose the first game of the series. They lose the first game by a score of 2-1. They win their second game, which is their first game of the year, by a score of 3-1, and then obviously they lose the third and final game of the series 2-1 to take a 2-1 series lead. And yeah, man, on to Miami, where we can definitely use that road trip as a boost. Because after the Miami series, we will be heading back home for the home opener at Citi Field April 4th at 3:10. I unfortunately am gonna have to run out of work because I clock out at 3. So I'm gonna see how I'm gonna get there quick enough. But other than that, man, that is your series recap. The Mets are coming off, a little bit of a funk, but you give them a pass because it's opening series, and yeah, man, it's just trying to gel early so that way they know where they're headed as a team. But shout out to all my fans, man. Shout out, and when I say fans, I mean all my peoples on X Twitter. Shout out to Queens Baseball, always holding it down. Shout out to Rube the Pope. Shout out to Josh the accountant. Shout out to Keith from Shay and Sons. Make sure you go follow those fellas for daily Mets Queens Baseball spaces. They got a lot of big things going on. So please shoot them a follow and give some love to Queens Baseball. That's family right there. And then obviously shout out to my guys, Chris Torres and AP, that you already seen on the 7 Express podcast. Make sure you follow those fellas, and make sure that you follow the 7 Express podcast on all your social media platforms, on X, Instagram, YouTube, and even the podcast on Spotify. Please listen to some of our regular audio episodes. And yeah, man, shout out to the Mets community. I do appreciate you guys. Shout out to everybody that have watched in and tuned this video. If you have not already, please like, follow, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It really would mean a lot. And let me know what you guys think in the comments about this video. Did I hit some good points? Was there anything that I missed? Is there something that you agree or disagree on? Yeah, man, let me know your feedback. Like always, I will see you guys in the next video. Let's go Mets, and let's get ready for Miami. Peace.